Allegations have to be dealt with. Now, it's right that the Attorney-General should see whether a crime has been committed. But isn't it also important that the Prime Minister is satisfied that Britain has throughout acted with moral authority over and above the question about whether a crime has been committed? And can the Prime Minister tell us what he has done to satisfy himself of the true facts in this case?
Mr. Speaker, let me say right at the outset, this government unreservedly condemns the use of torture. Under no circumstances will we participate in, encourage or condone the use of torture for any purpose. And I have instructed where allegations are made about torture, they must be properly examined, including, if necessary, by the courts. Now, the Attorney-General is looking at the very specific allegations in this case. If there is evidence, this evidence will be referred to the police, and the police will then be able to conduct a criminal inquiry. But the matter is at the moment with the Attorney-General, who is looking at all the evidence. As I say, I've instructed that whenever allegations are made, they are properly investigated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm grateful for the Prime Minister's assurances, and we agree completely with what he says about torture being unacceptable. And we all want to eradicate the potential stain on Britain's reputation. But the question is whether an investigation into criminal conduct by the Attorney-General is enough. Surely we need to look at what procedures and processes are in place to ensure that Britain cannot knowingly or unknowingly be implicated in torture. Isn't that why we need a brief, judge-led inquiry into what happened and what lessons need to be learned?
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate what he says, and it's absolutely right that at all times we're vigilant. Because the freedoms and liberties of this country are best served by making absolutely sure that we unreservedly condemn and do not allow the use of torture. The Intelligence and Security Committee have investigated some aspects of these matters. They have had reports that have been done in 2005 and 2007. They will continue, obviously, to look at these matters because that is their statutory role given to them. At the same time, the Attorney-General will look at all the details, and I've made it clear that there is a next stage. If there is any evidence that should lead to a police investigation, that evidence will be referred to the police, and if the police decide so, then a criminal investigation will be carried out. I think this is the best way to deal with these specific instances. The Intelligence and Security Committee looks at the general cases.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but it's not clear that the Attorney-General's inquiry is going to answer the question that the Prime Minister himself rightly poses, which is, have we acted properly at all times during these procedures? The Attorney-General is going to be looking at the one case rather than the procedures in all cases. Yeah. The Attorney-General is looking at whether a crime has been committed, quite rightly, but isn't really looking at our moral authority and whether it's been maintained. Doesn't the Prime Minister see that an inquiry is likely to become necessary? Either the Attorney-General will find a crime has been committed, in which case there'll be a clamour for an inquiry to answer how on earth this was allowed to happen. Or, on the other hand, if the Attorney-General decides not to go ahead with a prosecution, we still won't really have the answers to what happened in this important case. On either ground, wouldn't it be better to order that judge-led inquiry instead of having it dragged out in the weeks ahead?
I have to say that the Intelligence and Security Committee has and continues to inquire into these matters. And of course we've had a debate about the full status of the Intelligence and Security Committee for the future, but they have looked at the issue of rendition in great detail in their previous inquiry. Can I just say, as regards the Attorney-General, that the Home Secretary referred the question of possible criminal wrongdoing to the Attorney-General in her role as an advisor to government. She is consulting others, as is necessary, about what needs to be done. Obviously, it is for her to decide how she is likely to proceed. But the court, which heard Binyan Mohammed's judicial review case, has made clear that they think this is the right way to proceed. So I hope he will allow the inquiries that are taking place to proceed. And on the general issues he's raised, of course, Britain, because of our defence of freedom and liberty, wishes to be seen to be doing everything in our power to deal with questions that arise about the use of torture or rendition. But I believe that the Intelligence and Security Committee at this stage is the best way to proceed. But let us hear the report of the Attorney-General.
That committee is a group of MPs and peers.
In addition to the welcome observations the Prime Minister made about the terrible tragedies in Northern Ireland, does he also agree